just wanted to talk to you about what it's like. Is it okay if I record in here? Are you the owner?
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to ask you what it's like owning a small business during the lockdown.
For us, we were going to come out somewhat okay because we had regular subscribers. So, even if the stuff wasn't picked up right away, it would eventually get picked up. So, the only thing it really hurt for, obviously, is walk-in clientele. That's the only thing that's really been... And that hasn't been the same since March of last year. So, that hasn't changed, really. Because everybody that was walking clientele for the most part in this downtown core were people who work downtown, and then a lot of them haven't worked since March. Like, we're talking a year now. A lot of them haven't been here.
Yeah.
So,
when
we'd already made our adjustments at that point, cutting down the amount of product we carried extra on the shelf and that kind of stuff, just because we didn't have the kind of walk-in clientele that we had a year ago. So, we've been doing that since pretty much the spring last year.
What kind of drops did you see in walk-ins once the pandemic hit?
There's hardly any by comparison now. You know, you still get some people that come in, but I think they're all people that kind of live in the area and they're just shopping because they're walking around downtown, because they're living downtown. As far as people that work in the offices and stuff here, those guys have all vanished. I haven't seen them since the pandemic started. So they're obviously buying at the store closest to wherever they live probably at this point, because it's just convenience for them rather than come all the way downtown to pick stuff up. So
yeah.
Yeah.
A year ago today, the WHO declared this a pandemic. Do you have any thoughts on that?
We all knew it was coming. You know, when they first announced it, the first thing I said to a lot of people was, if they don't control that area where it all begins and restrict the air travel coming into the country and keeping that area kind of quarantined, that it was going to spread. There is no doubt in my mind that was going to happen. Obviously, people were kind of hoping it wouldn't. They'd be able to control it, but it was such a struggle for them to find something that worked as far as a vaccine, and the timeline it took to get results and figure out exactly what it was and to try and fix it. It was it was tough. I think at the beginning, you know, the government handled it pretty well here. You know, we went into lockdown right away, you know, and they tried to shut it down as quickly as possible. I think they didn't keep it long enough, to be honest. And I think they should have worked something out with the states to agree on a timeline, and everyone should have stuck to it. Because the problem is the U.S. definitely didn't take it as seriously as we did, and it, you know, 250,000 people later, and they had to learn the hard way that they made a huge mistake. But I don't know. It's a tough one because you can't have this kind of thing happen and not try and shut it down as quickly and as fiercely as possible. But everyone was complaining so much, and there were so many people that I was like, you have to look at the bigger picture. You do a little bit of sacrificing now, and you put an end to this, and it's done. Whereas if you don't follow the rules, you don't watch what you're doing, and you just live life the way you want to live it, this stuff is going to be forever until everyone gets a vaccine that they'll find is effective enough to work. So it's taken this long now to even do that. But I just got mad when I'd see, you know, they lifted the little restrictions a little bit, and then you'd see people flocking to public parks and, you know, hanging out in restaurants in large groups and no masks, and they had to introduce the mask regulations because people weren't, you know, distancing well enough, and they should have done that from the very beginning. The masks thing was the biggest mistake they made. They should have just said everyone's got to mask up after they come back after that first lockdown in March of last year. That was a huge mistake. But, you know, I like I said, I don't think people thought it was going to be something that was going to last this long. They were figuring someone would figure out something for it and fix it long before now, but they screwed up. They underestimated it, and that's typically what happens in a pandemic situation. By the time it's out of control, it's too late. You know, you can't go back and fix it. Then you're stuck with it. So, but for us in business wise, it's just, you know, the government's been good, giving us some support with regards to, you know, the grants, and you know, we qualified for that. We also got, you know, some wage subsidies and The only one that really, isn't affecting us as much is the rent subsidy, and that's because it's based on a percentage of your sales, and our sales just didn't drop to the low the numbers as what they required for us to qualify for that. But that's because we have regular clientele.
Yeah,
and had stuff set aside. So when the stuff got picked up, our sales obviously reflected that stuff when it got picked up, or when I delivered it. I was delivering for a while in March and April as well. So it's different for people who don't have that that kind of thing to fall back on. So I can't imagine the businesses like say the barber shops, the hair salons, the nail places, like stuff where you got to have human contact with people. I'm surprised half of them or more haven't disappeared already. So I'm guessing it's because some of the government money has helped them, but it's they've got it way worse than us. And restaurants in some way, if they didn't have the means to make the pivot to having delivery done or to have takeout rather than just dine in, But yeah, I'd say.
Did you notice any supply chain shortages?
No, there was no problems for us other than, like when we went into that first lockdown, states went into the lockdown around the same time. So the distributor that we get all our books from, they stopped shipping, thankfully. If they'd continued to ship while we were in lockdown, that we could have been in a lot worse situation than what we were, because we would have had no way to sell anything. Yeah. Because they didn't have anything in play at that point for curbside or anything else. They just said you're shut down and that's it. Delivery only kind of thing was kind of the rule at that point in that first lockdown. So I did do a bunch of delivery runs because it was just easier. But if they'd kept producing and printing books while we were in that first lockdown scenario, that wouldn't have been good. We'd be in much worse shape than we are right now. But they even came back earlier than I was kind of hoping they would do. But they wanted to get the economy back rolling and things going back to normal, but just led to what happened in December where we shut down again, because they didn't enforce it long enough. I think they needed to control it better. So it is what it is. You can second guess things till the cows come home about what they did. There's been lots of decent things the government have tried to do to help, but there's a lot of mistakes they made too. And it's not just them, it's every government in every country, except for the ones that went into severe military lockdown, where they basically had people on the streets doing checkpoint stuff and not telling people they couldn't leave or they had to go back home and that kind of stuff. Like I heard stories about that kind of thing going on, but it's easier to do that in smaller places than it would be to do it in large cities like this. How you gonna control that? You know what I mean? It's impossible. You could put checkpoints maybe at the highway entrances, pull people over before they get on the highway and see what they're doing, why they're doing what they're doing, and why they're out and that kind of thing. But all they have to do is say they're an essential worker and they have to work downtown. And if how can they prove otherwise unless you have to get some sort of document that the government would have to provide, to have them. But I don't know. I don't know what the answer was, but
no, you're very well spoken, and I like your answers.
Yeah,
On a totally separate note, this is going to be a totally different story. What are the ups and downs of having the marijuana dispensary across the streets?
To be honest with you, it doesn't really affect us. We're probably in a worse situation in the old location we were in before this, because we were on the second floor, just down the other end of the block here, and there was a massage parlor in the same floor as us. So we carry product for kids and stuff like that. We got the Asian massage girls next door, so that was probably a worse neighbor for me to worry about than the cannabis dispensary, especially now that it's legal. Well,
that's what I don't agree with.
Yeah.
But thanks a lot for the interview.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
If you want to look me up,